The book that she's put out tells the story of her life and challenges that she's had to overcome and struggle with. She doesn't have, she's obviously had a very happy ending to her life, to what's been happening to her now. But leading up to that, she
had a difficult life.
Had a lot of hardship. She was born in 1961, so she's 49. And of course her first album came out after Britain's Got Talent, and it became Amazon's best-selling album.
Is that right?
In pre-sales.
Wow.
So in terms of people ordering, so that's pretty impressive. And in only 6 weeks of sales, it became the biggest selling album in the world for 2009.
What an amazing change she has had, say, in a 2-year period in her life. Like from going from what it was, say, 2 years ago to now, you couldn't even imagine that in your wildest dreams. You just couldn't.
Yeah, just a fairy tale, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
So, and she sold 9 million copies of that CD.
Wow.
Yeah. And she was officially recognised in 2010, last year. Oh, this year, September 2010. Oh, my God, I'm already in 2011.
You are.
That's sad, isn't it?
Put on the brakes, girl.
It's because I've been writing out gift cards and they all expire in 2011. In September, so not long ago, she was officially recognised by the Guinness Book of World Records as having had the fastest selling debut album for a female artist in the UK.
Ever? Or
yeah, ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. She's really had an amazing rise to fame. And she's had the best makeover.
Well, hasn't she
I
ever?
know. It's so cool when you've got money, you can just...
Yeah, she's got a good stylist.
It's amazing what a bit of a different hairdo, getting your eyebrows plucked, what all can that can do, isn't it?
Yeah, look what they did to John Howard with his eyebrows.
Oh, that's right. They should have plucked them a bit more.
So she was born in Scotland, and her parents were actually Ireland immigrants.
Irish?
Yes.
Yep.
And her father was a miner and her mother was a shorthand typist.
Okay.
And she was the youngest of 4 brothers and 6 sisters.
I didn't realise she came from that
big family.
Because I've only ever heard, when they quote, family members, it's only ever been her brother. I didn't realise she came, what's that, 10? Family of 10? Wow, I didn't realise that.
Yeah, she was the youngest.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And she was actually, because she was the youngest, her mum was 47 when she had her.
Wow.
So for that, I guess a lot of, people in her era, they, and particularly Catholics, I guess, had lots of kids. And so it would be fairly common, wouldn't it, for them to be having children up to a really old... It's like they started early, but then they kept going.
I think if you're very strictly... Irish Catholic. I don't know so much about today, but I think you just had children as long as you could have children. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
But apparently, and there was some complications in her birth, and she was deprived of oxygen, and she was later diagnosed with learning difficulties.
I think she said she was quite picked on for that as she was growing up.
Yeah, she was. And they called her, all through school, they called her Susie Simple. That was her nickname.
Wow, they can call her Susie Successful now, can't they? Yeah. See, wasn't that a great revenge to just be so successful to all the people that picked on you? Say, wow, I wasn't so silly after all, was I?
Yeah, exactly. She still lives in her family home, even after all her...
I just recently read that she's just bought a new house.
Oh, okay.
And it's not like a grand, like it's not like a mansion or anything, but it's like a lovely house, and she's just recently purchased it, because I don't think she could bear initially to leave the family home because her mother, she grew up there and etc. But she has bought a house now.
Okay. I think that's good. I think she's like been able to move on now.
Yeah, absolutely. And also too, apparently they had a few people stalking the house, and I think at the end of the day they thought it was safer if she moved on.
Yeah. Well, she's never been married.
I reckon that might change.
Yes, I think she's probably got a few people knocking on at her door.
I think so.
Because she basically dedicated her life to her mother.
Yes.
And she died in 2006. 2007 when she was 91. So she was
She
hanging
had a
in
good
there.
life. Wow, she did indeed. Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately, she didn't get to see
Which is a
Susan's
shame.
rise to fame.
And it's interesting that maybe if her mother hadn't passed away, maybe she wouldn't have even gone on that show, because she'd lost her mum, she felt she'd try.
Yeah,
this.
what did she have to lose anyway?
Yeah, exactly right. So maybe
Yeah.
she may not have even tried that had that not happened. But I'm sure her mum's looking down on her and is very proud of her.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, I thought that would be really something really interesting.
And people are big, as you said, big fans of Susan Boyle. So, yes, it'd be a good read, I think.
Yeah, definitely. You know, such a real fairy tale story.
Absolutely. You're listening to Creative Corner, and we're talking about biographies today. So what's the next one you've got for us?
We're talking about the David Hicks biography, the Guantanamo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So is that out at the moment?
Yeah, it just came out.
Okay.
So what amazed me was that he's only 35. You've heard so much about David Hicks over the last, 7 years that, I don't know, it gives you the impression that he's a lot older than that. But yeah, he's only actually 35 now. And, an Adelaide boy, just, headed off to start exploring the world in 1999 and ends up in
where it ended up.
So pretty big story, I think. He ended up in
Absolutely.
Guantanamo Bay for 5.5 years. It's funny because he was a bit of sounds like he was a bit strange in terms of the types of jobs he liked to do. And he did all sorts of, he didn't cope with school very well, and actually got a written dispensation from his father to say that he could leave school at 14 because he wasn't coping and didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
And did all sorts of...
was that not coping with school and socially, like both aspects? Do you know?
I'm not really sure.
Okay,
I didn't sort of get into it that in depth, but he just didn't want to be there, and they didn't want him there.
Oh,
I think he got expelled from a couple of schools or something like that.
Right, so he had a few difficulties early on. Really,
yeah. But he did all sorts of jobs like skinning kangaroos at a meat factory.
Oh, I guess there's people that make a living out of doing that stuff.
I know.
I personally couldn't make a living out of doing that stuff.
Like fishing for sharks.
Okay.
And, did a lot of outback cattle station type work.
Yeah.
But he did get involved in criminal activity at one
stage. Never good. Which is never good.
And, he got sort of involved in vehicle theft and had but he didn't have a criminal record as an adult.
Okay.
Yeah, so, this kid decides, well, there's nothing much holding me in Australia. I'll head off and see what I can do and explore the world. And in his explorations, he discovered Islam. Apparently he was reading about Islam while he was working in the cattle stations, so he was already interested.
Developing an interest,
yeah. So he headed to Afghanistan and changed his name when he converted. And then only a couple of years later, he was captured by the Afghan Northern Alliance, who then sold him to the Americans for $1,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
has this been revealed before, or has this come out in the book?
I'm not sure.
I don't know enough about him either.
This is his side of the story.
Correct, yeah.
And he claims in this book that, that he was tortured severely and all sorts of things. So,
and as you say, it's from his perspective, so you have to take.
All we've had so far is the perspective of the American military, and people get to a point where they start to believe it as truth, but it's only what people they've had to say about
exactly right. And at the end of the day, with some of these things, unless you were there, you'll never really know for 100% truth.
Exactly. What I do remember about him and his case was that his father was very supportive of him and, really worked hard to bring him back to Australia.
Oh, yes, that was, I remember that being in the press as well.
Yeah.
But as I said, I don't really know enough about the case or anything to really comment, so I won't.
He was first charged in 2004, and it was under a new law that the US had
To do with terrorism.
Yeah, it was, and so they charged. He was the first person to be charged under that new law.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so so he was stuck there for 5.5 years before they finally successfully brought him across to finish his sentence
in Australia.
And, and he did that in his hometown. He did that in an Adelaide prison.
Okay. Is he married?
Yes, he was married before he left Australia. No, he wasn't married. It was a de facto relationship.
Oh, okay, yep.
And he'd had children in that relationship who he'd lost contact with.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's since gotten married again to an actual human rights activist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, he's certainly done a lot in his 35 years.
Oh, I know. I don't know if this is it's the sort of stuff I would have wanted to do, but
no, probably not myself either.
Yeah.
But if you're interested in his side of the story, then what's the book called?
It's called Guantanamo.
And that's out at the moment.
Yes.